What is up, everybody? We are live. Welcome in to NBA Live here on this Thursday evening. As always, we're presented to you, the fine folks in the FTN Nation, by Super Draft Daily Fantasy. And I'm joined today by my good friend, the Opto extraordinaire, Kyle Murray himself, a.k.a. K-Mur DFS. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I this is the first show that we've done with your new your backdrop, and I like it, man. I'm digging it. I like the little sign on the back, and hopefully we can extend that streak one more day.
Yeah, man. I was on Matt Friedman's show yesterday afternoon, and he talked while muted. So I gave him an honorary 0 up there on the little board. So yeah, I kind of got to recurate. I think what I got there, I got my Southwestern football helmet. That's the school I coached at the last 7 years. And Thursday night football, it's Steelers time. So I got the yellow going back there. Yeah, we're upgrading down here in Texas. But yeah, man, we'll be here for the next hour. Short 3-game slate, as we were saying in the green room before we went live. Coming off that gauntlet 13-game slate last night that just went completely sideways in some corners of the slate. Io DeSumo, and then worked out really well for anybody who got some of that news right, especially late. And your Armani Brookses. There was another value guy that Caleb Martin did really well for the Heat. So yeah, just kind of a wild slate. So more condensed today. And I think some good basketball games, like from a real hoop standpoint here tonight. Not all the flashiest teams like the Spurs, the Grizzlies without Ja Morant, but all close spreads. Nothing looking too crazy here in terms of potential blowouts. But that's what we're here for, to kind of break it all down for you guys game by game. So let me pull up, Kyle, your projection. So I'm not running blind here. And let's jump into the first game, which is the Utah Jazz visiting the Philadelphia 76ers, 216.5 total, with the visiting Jazz favored by 3. These two teams played a few weeks back in Utah, so this is the second and final matchup between the Jazz and the Sixers. That was a shorthanded Sixers season. I don't know if you remember that game, but Utah embarrassed them on national television. Most of the main Utah guys sat out the majority of the second half. But obviously, Philadelphia is getting healthier and a much closer spread tonight. So starting with the visiting Jazz, what stands out to you for Utah?
Yeah, this should be a pretty interesting game from a real basketball perspective. I will say, on a 3-game slate, kind of have to pick your spots at times. Like yesterday, it felt like anywhere you looked, you could find multiple guys on any team with that 5x projected point per dollar value metric there, which you don't really have that pleasure here in this one. I only have one player amongst both sites, FanDuel and DraftKings, that has a 5x salary multiplier in terms of the point per dollar rating, and that's Rudy Gay over on DraftKings. Other than that, nobody else. But that doesn't mean that there's no good plays here. I think on the Utah side, the guy that stands out to me most is probably going to be Donovan Mitchell, but I think he's going to have a ton of ownership. And on a 3-game slate, taking your shots on fading certain guys like Donovan Mitchell, who obviously he can go out and end your night fairly quickly here. But I still think that this one is a spot where if you were to decide to fade him in a spot where, obviously he has a ceiling any given night, but just the fact that he's going to carry 40, 50% ownership in some contests, he's a guy that I'm probably looking to potentially leverage and get underweight on just because of how high the ownership is. Again, not because I think he's a bad player or anything. The price is actually pretty good on him, 8,400 on FanDuel, 88 on DraftKings. So the price is fine. It's just more so the ownership. And if I'm going to be playing some of these cheaper, chalky guys and some of the chalkier spend-up options, I got to find a way to get different somewhere, right? And especially on FanDuel, where he's 8,400 and 41% projected ownership. He's top 10 in the player rater, but I just don't know if he's a guy that I'm going to want to eat that chalk on in comparison to other players who are going to be popular on the slate.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. And looking at your projections here, I think it's kind of interesting when you see a guy like Mike Conley, $3,000 cheaper than Spider on DraftKings, and projecting in terms of points per dollar the exact same for you as of the last update. So any interest in those mid-range guys, Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, because I think on this on the shorter slates, right, we got to be looking at guys who typically, especially on like a slate like yesterday, we would have just X'd out of our pool. But now with so few options on a 3-game slate, these guys come more into play. So what's your favorite option from Utah kind of in that mid-range?
Yeah, on DraftKings, Conley's definitely in play for me. I like Bogdanovich probably the most amongst those guys there. I actually like Royce O'Neal a bit as well, and
Yeah.
I think I side towards Clarkson being a good fade here. I have him at about 30% projected ownership on DraftKings. I mean, he's a guy, again, similar to Mitchell, where even if he plays limited time, which obviously that's not really the case for Mitchell, but even if Clarkson goes out there and plays, low to mid 20s, he can still get the job done. He likes to shoot a lot, and he, typically has usage rate of around 28 to 30%. So definitely ways he can get there in limited time. But in terms of just looking for potential spots where chalk might be a little bit more fragile, I think that this could be one for Clarkson. So obviously, while Bogdanovich is similar ownership, about 5% less, I feel more secure about his minutes and more secure about his role in the offense. And then Conley is just going to be lower owned, obviously a little bit more expensive, but I mean, only $900 more to get to Conley, who I feel a little bit better about the minutes, and not as good about the usage, but fairly similar in terms of the point per minute production. So Mike Conley, I think it would be a guy I would like to get over Clarkson, especially on DraftKings with the significant ownership difference.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much right there with you on all this Utah stuff. Donovan Mitchell's still hovering around that career high usage rate, depending on where you look, 33 point something. I've seen a couple different numbers in different outlets, but tough to fade that completely. I think if you're running multiple lineups, Rudy Gobert obviously jumping back kind of to the top of this team. I would have liked Rudy more if Hassan Whiteside was still out with that glute injury that he sat for last night. I think that just would have raised Gobert's floor. But if you're talking about like the matchup, right? I think on both sides, in terms of the center position, on paper, you don't look at going up against Joel Embiid or vice versa, going up against Rudy Gobert as being a good matchup. But from a fantasy perspective, Rudy Gobert has been decent at worst, I think, against Joel Embiid. Last season in March, played 38 minutes, was his worst game of his last 4 against Embiid. And then you're jumping all the way back to the 2018-19 season, or I guess I should say the 19-20 season, to find the next 2 matchups where Gobert had a lot of success, 52 and 48 DraftKings points respectively. And then the season before that, his one game he played Embiid, 47 and a quarter DraftKings points. So at his price at 8.4, he's definitely still in play, as you said a few minutes ago. Just to make the point, I wouldn't shy away from Gobert just based on the tough matchup against Embiid. And then I'm with you, man. Conley, Bojan, I think are very solid options on this slate. Just for the value, right? Because there's not a lot, like we're waiting on Spurs starters. We're waiting on Kyle Anderson news for the Grizzlies, but there's not a ton of value, regardless of how that news breaks, that we have just to, windmill slam in tonight. So some of the guys in the 5K and 6K range, I think are going to end up big time priorities. And those guys that you mentioned, Conley and Bojan, I think kind of fit that bill where if I was playing my typical 20 lineups, I would want to have at least 3 or 4 shares of each of those guys. And I think for me, I'm prioritizing Conley. I think he can still just spike that big time upside game in a spot like this. He's clearly not the all-star Mike Conley that we were used to in Memphis or even in the first couple years with Utah, but still a, uber talented player. And when the usage doesn't completely disappear as it has in some games this season, he can get on top of this 5.8 price tag. Before we kind of jump down to Ingles, Whiteside, Rudy Gay, etc., looking at some of the super draft multipliers on these guys, I think it's Donovan Mitchell. Excuse me, I was about to say DeJounte Murray. It's Donovan Mitchell for me at that 1.2x. I think I would probably be multiple lineups in before I didn't roster him with that extra 20% bonus on his fantasy points tonight. And then I think Gobert also sneaky, especially in tournaments, because you only get the one center spot over there. And we'll talk about Jokic. We don't need to cover Jokic a ton to know that he's going to be one of the best plays on any side if you can get to him. And where there's no salary over there, I think Jokic is going to eat up a lot of that center ownership in tournaments. So Gobert can be sneaky over there. Talking about Rudy Gay, Joe Ingles, and then Hassan Whiteside coming back off the injury from last night. Any of those guys stand out in terms of, hey, maybe I want to get over the field if I'm running 150?
Yeah, Rudy Gay's probably that guy for me. He's a guy who not necessarily has been reliable in terms of massive minutes every single night, but we know like he's very similar to someone like I don't want to necessarily say he's similar to Clarkson in the sense that he can put up these massive permanent performances because he's probably going to get less minutes than Clarkson, but in the sense that he can go out there and in limited time have those big games where he's well over his value threshold. Gay has those similar capabilities. So far this season, he's over 1 fantasy point per minute on both sides, and he's actually at 1.1 over on DraftKings. So he's a guy who, if he manages to find his way into playing mid-20s minutes, I think he has a really good chance at crushing here. But even if he's playing 18, 19 minutes, and again, that's typically not something that you're looking for on a regular slate, but on a 3-game slate, sometimes that's just the kind of plays that you're finding here in this value range. So again, he's a guy who probably isn't going to play 30 minutes. And in my opinion, if he plays mid-20s minutes, he's probably going to have a really good chance at crushing this price tag, especially on DraftKings where he's under 4K. But then again, even if he's in between 18 and 20, I still think he has a good shot at paying off this price tag here. On FanDuel, I still think he's in play slightly. He's not as much of an interest to me as he is on DraftKings, where he has that nice salary. But even on SuperDraft, he is the third best projected player for me on SuperDraft in this game, not on the slate, in this game. So that's I think top 20 on the slate in terms of SuperDraft. So I mean, if you're playing several lineups, you can make your way into a couple of builds. But overall, he'll definitely be my priority amongst him and Ingles. Ingles is fine as well. I just don't really get the same feeling about Ingles as I do Rudy Gay. Like you'll probably get a couple more minutes from Ingles, but in terms of point per minute, like he's almost doubling up Ingles' point per minute production in certain cases. So definitely prefer Gay over Ingles tonight.
Yeah, I don't differ on any of that. So let's go ahead and flip to the Philadelphia side. We talked a little bit about Joel Embiid when we were talking Rudy Gobert, but Embiid up top, obviously 11K flat on DraftKings, 10-6 on FanDuel. Again, I kind of alluded to the fact that Embiid and Gobert have actually had some decent games against each other over the last couple of years. And so if I pull up Embiid against Gobert, you see last March, 40 minutes. It was an overtime game, so you got to take that into account. But it wasn't just the 5 minutes that pushed Embiid over the top last time out against the Jazz. 40 points, 19 boards, some other peripherals for good measure, 75 3/4 DK points. And then if you look further back against Gobert, he's got a 40, a 45 in there. You would not be happy with that tonight, but also a 56 and a 61 on DraftKings. So I think Embiid maybe a little sneaky. You have him only 20% owned on DraftKings right now, 22 on FanDuel. So where do you stand on the man in the middle for Philadelphia?
Yeah, I don't mind Embiid. I mean, I definitely prefer Jokic though, so that's like the big problem. Like, if Embiid was going to be like 10% owned on this slate, then that would really make him very interesting because I mean we've seen it before where Embiid's been on a slate with Jokic. I think twice now this week, the first time he played Charlotte this week, he outscored Jokic and everyone was on Jokic over Embiid. So if that were to be the case, then I would have more interest in going to Embiid, who I have projected for about 7 or 8 points less. But at that point, you're paying up for Jokic or Embiid because you're not really getting a price difference, but also you're not really getting a massive ownership difference either at this point. So I do prefer Jokic pretty significantly because at this point you're either paying up and eating chalk at center anyway. So for me, I'm just going to play the one that I think is going to have the better game, and that's Jokic. But I mean, if you're doing a ton of lineups, if you're doing any more than probably 3, I mean, it doesn't make sense to ignore Embiid completely. We know he has the ceiling. So it definitely in play for me. But again, I do prefer Jokic at center today.
Yeah, I think if you want to get really different on a site where you can play two centers, or super draft where Embiid still has some forward eligibility over there.
Yeah.
Stacking Embiid and Jokic is certainly going to be different, but then you're really diving into the Spurs value. You're probably going to have multiple Memphis guys on those teams, maybe some of the mid-range Jazz players. So again, I would be multiple lineups in before I did that, but that's certainly a way to get different in the big tournaments tonight. Looking down the rest of the Philly roster, again, we said at the top, this team getting healthier. Tobias Harris in there, Tyrus Maxi is back. And then you're looking at, the guard roulette, right? Seth Curry, Shake Milton, Danny Green. Danny Green much cheaper, and I think my favorite value from this team. But let's talk Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey. Either of those guys priorities for you on this short slate?
Not priorities. Like, I think they're fine, but definitely not priorities for me. I mean, again, like, Tobias doesn't really change much with, I mean, obviously he doesn't get net positively impacted with Embiid on the floor, but in terms of the price tag, it hasn't really changed much whether he's been on the floor or off. So it's hard to really distinct if he is a massive value at this price tag. For Tyrese Maxey, we saw him up in the 8Ks at one point, so that might lead to people thinking that he's a value here. But with Embiid on the floor earlier in the season, he was in the 5Ks at times. So I don't necessarily think he's like super overpriced. So he's fine, but probably not guys I'm like going out of my way to get into the lineups. And that's kind of how I feel about pretty much everybody on the Philly team. Like, matchup's not great. Utah's top 10 in defensive efficiency, and they're in the bottom half in terms of pace. So it's not really a great matchup here. But I still think that if you wanted to play one or two of these guys in terms of the wings, probably not playing multiple in the same lineup, but Curry's fine on FanDuel where he's 5,400. We know he can kind of get hot. And you mentioned Danny Green. On DraftKings, he makes some sense. You probably feel pretty comfortable he's going to play mid-20s minutes at a minimum. And at 3,300, on a 3-game slate, that's enough to be in play.
Yeah, I agree. And let me flip my screen back to Philadelphia here. Yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, these guys are secondary at best, kind of with the exception of Danny Green. I think I would take, unless I'm crunching and I get 80% Danny Green or something like that, I'm going to limit I'm going to limit my Danny Green shares if that happens. But he just, the minutes are coming up. If I recall correctly, he was announced to be on a minutes limit a few weeks back, and you look the last 3 games, that limit's gone now, 27, 30, and 34 minutes in his last 3. And, Danny Green can go out there and give you 8 fantasy points, give you the Io DeSumo every once in a while. But he can also go out there and bang 3 or 4 threes and rack up a couple stocks. And at 3-3 on a 3-game slate can really turn into a value that you'll need. So if I'm running more than 5 lineups, I would have at least one Danny Green share and possibly multiple. Just, as we go here, if anybody in chat, you see more 3K guys that you would rather have than Danny Green, or some of the Spurs guys we'll talk about, let me know, because I'm not seeing a ton of them. If you were going to, last man in here, a Seth Curry, a Shake Milton, are you staying in that range, or would you take a chance on a guy like Matisse Thybulle? Because Thybulle, compared to the Niangs, the Korkmazes of the world, getting the most minutes once everybody's healthy here in the low 20s. Would you Matisse Thybulle at all, or are you like 10, 15 lineups in before you even consider him?
Yeah, it would probably be at least 10 to 15 lineups. I mean, he's so cheap to where you can just throw a stab at it, but at that point, I would just rather just play Danny Green. Like,
Yeah.
It'd be really hard for me to even consider Thybulle over Danny Green, just because I think his minutes are so much more secure. They're about even on a permanent basis on FanDuel, because Thybulle makes up so much of that ground in steals and blocks. But on DraftKings, Danny Green's at about 0.73. Thybulle's at about 0.66 on the year. So I prefer Green pretty significantly on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, I can't really consider either of them because they're both almost 5K. They're 47. Thybulle's 4,700 and Green's 4,800. So at that rate, like, I can find the salary and get to Seth Curry if I really wanted to play one of these Sixers guards. And then conversely with Shake Milton, Shake Milton's only 100 more than Green and 200 more than Thybulle, who I think he's a much better permanent producer. And I think he could actually get similar minutes to Thybulle. So I would prefer Milton on FanDuel. So on FanDuel, it's very, very tough for me to get to Green or Thybulle. it would take quite a bit of lineups for me to get to them over there. But on DraftKings, Green makes a bit more sense with how cheap he is.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Just want to leave no stone unturned on this 3-game slate. So let's go ahead and move on to this second game. Making decent time here, only 20 minutes for that first game, so we're right on track. Lakers at Memphis. We'll start with the Lakers. If all 3 of these studs are in, I'm going to continue harping on this stat that Russell Westbrook has not cracked 47.25 DK points this season when he shares the court with LeBron James, with 2 exceptions. The game where, LeBron just manhandled your boy Beef Stew and got ejected at the beginning of the second half. Russ got there that game, exceeded 47 DK points. The triple overtime game against Sacramento, Russ exceeded 47 DK points. But to me, at 9-9, with some of the studs we already talked about, we'll talk about Jokic, DeJounte Murray, and LeBron and Anthony Davis on the same team. I cannot, if I'm running my 20 lineups tonight, I'm not playing any Westbrook at 9-9. If 40, I think 47 is his ceiling right now. And until he shows it, this is a 13-game sample size. It's not exactly small yet. It's not, a full season. But, if this is the night Russ exceeds 47 DK and he goes, really exceeds it, right? 55 plus DK and you need him at the end of the night. Then I'm congrats to everybody who played him at the lower ownership. That's fine. I need to see it first till I can play it. So where do you stand on Russ? And then I guess after that, LeBron and Anthony Davis, who are you favoring there?
So typically I would agree with you. I think, though, that since it's a 3-game slate, and nobody's going to play this guy, he's going to be 10% or less on both sides. So I think that there's some merit to there. That's like saying, a 10% outcome that maybe he exceeds what you mentioned, 55. So I agree with you. His I guess normal ceiling is probably around 47, 48. But in terms of true outlier outcomes where maybe it's an overtime game, I don't want to say LeBron getting ejected again in a likely range of outcomes,
Sure.
But just these games happening where and it's a good matchup too for against Memphis. So I'm gonna get to some Westbrook. I mean, he won't be in a main lineup or anything because in my opinion you can play the better version of Russell Westbrook on the San Antonio Spurs, and for similar price. But again, at 10% or less ownership on both sides, I'm at 12% of FanDuel actually. I think that could be a little bit high. So overall, I agree with you, but it's just an ownership play if you wanted to get to him. And the matchup's good too. But if I had to decide between AD or LeBron, it's going to be AD for me. LeBron's going to be a little bit lesser owned, but still, I think I like AD ceiling a bit more, especially on FanDuel, 10K. And obviously, he gets all the benefits from the steals and the blocks and all that good stuff. So he's going to be popular, but he's the guy that I would prefer on the Lakers. I also think Taylor Horton Tucker's in play again here. I don't think he'll pick up a ton of ownership on DraftKings. He'll probably pick up some on FanDuel where he's 5,100. But again, another guy who we've seen his minutes kind of start creeping into more regular territory with all 3 of those stars healthy and on the court. So that helps. But also a guy who he's not necessarily shown flashes as much this year, but in terms of I've seen Joe go crazy in the chat. But in terms of what we've seen in the past, year and a half or whatever, when he gets time on the floor, he can be a really efficient, permanent producer. So playing him, those 4 plays, the main 3, and then Taylor Horton Tucker, probably be the guys I have the most interest in. Ranking the big 3, it would be Anthony Davis, LeBron, and Westbrook. But again, Westbrook is still pretty interesting to me just because of the fact that he is so low owned. And, if you look at his permanent points with LeBron on the floor, it's under 1. So you're totally right where he hasn't been nearly as good, obviously, and it makes total sense. But I still think that he can get to a ceiling game here. And, even if he scores 50 and maybe it's a slate where a lot of these mid-tier guys that are so popular hit, right? So if we're playing 2 or 3 of these Memphis guys and they all hit value. So now you're really chalky there. And then all the top end guys, Jokic maybe doesn't have a massive ceiling game, or maybe you play Jokic with Westbrook, but the chalky guys like Anthony Davis or DeJounte Murray, maybe they don't quite get there. And Westbrook is, 50 point, gets a 50-point game or something. That could be enough to pay off and make you different. So Westbrook's in play from a game theory standpoint alone for me.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, because this is the type of slate where if you're going to take that chance, right? If you have the bankroll to play 20, 150 lineups, and you're going to play 50% Russell Westbrook and cross your fingers that this is the night that he proves me wrong, me and everybody else and the math, then you're going to make some money tonight, right? Unless the rest of your lineups are total crap. So from the game theory perspective, you're right on point. But yeah, it wouldn't be me tonight. But I'm right there with you with Anthony Davis slightly over LeBron. Although I do think, LeBron, it's not a national TV game, but this is a team that needs to win. And LeBron seems to me like he's coming in and kind of trying to take over and take charge and will this team to separate a little bit from that, the mediocre 500 record that they've had for the last couple of weeks. I'm right there with you on THT. I'm not expecting the world from him with all three of those studs in, but at 5.5, he's clearly the safest option to me out of him, Carmelo, Malik Monk. I still do think you can run out Monk if you're running multiple lineups, because Frank Vogel has shown the willingness to play Malik Monk 30 plus minutes. And if a guy like that, spark plug, shooter, scorer, volume scorer, and a guy that can spread the floor for this, below average shooting team out here in LA at 4.7, I think, you could find worse plays on the day. And speaking of worse plays, Avery Bradley could start again. I'm not getting there. Wayne Ellington's going to play some time off the bench. If this is the day that Wayne Ellington hits 6 threes and is the necessary value, good on the, 1.8% of people that'll play him tonight. If maybe does Dwight Howard get back into the starting lineup here for Avery Bradley, or was that just kind of a Bradley injury thing in your mind?
Honestly, I don't even know what happened. Like, it was very confusing. I was not expecting Bradley to start at all. I still think Dwight Howard will, essentially knock DeAndre Jordan down the totem pole there. But in terms of the starting group, I do have. Let me double check here. I have in the starting lineup. I do have Bradley getting the start again, just because they did it last game. So I typically tend to favor those kinds of trends. But again, it's tough to feel overly confident about it. Maybe they want to get Dwight Howard in there against Steven Adams to start the game. I know Anthony Davis would not like to see Steven Adams for the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game. So maybe they'll start with Dwight Howard.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting point I hadn't thought of. Although Anthony Davis, he has beefed up a little bit this year. It looks like carrying a little bit more weight. So let's flip to the Memphis side, where I think there's more interest from the field here. Most expensive player with John Moran out is Jaron Jackson Jr. on DraftKings at $7K flat. And this entire team, extremely cheap on FanDuel. So I imagine, as I look at your ownership projections here, those guys picking up a ton. Yeah. Especially at the top, Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks, 6'2". I love him again tonight. Shocker for the people that have been tuning in for the last 2.5 weeks. I'm still on the train waiting to catch that Dylan Brooks game. It literally has been just one factor or another night to night. Either he catches a little bit of foul trouble, they blow somebody out. That OKC game, he was great in his 15 minutes, but they won by 76 or whatever it was, so he didn't get there. Came out hot the other night, cooled off in the second half. I just think this is a great spot on a 3-game slate to continue attacking Dylan Brooks. I know the field feels the same way, 49% projected ownership on DraftKings, 60% on FanDuel. But this is just a guy I'm going to continue to ride with. I'm going to ride the 30+% usage. I'm going to ride the big minutes. They need him out there tonight. He's probably going to spend a good amount of time on a guy like LeBron James. So there's obviously he could shoot poorly again. He could pick up fouls, but I'm willing to take on that risk even at the elevated ownership because I think his price is fantastic on the slate.
Yeah, the price is super hard to ignore. If we're just looking to build from a pure leverage standpoint, the idea of fading a guy who kind of does rely on his shots falling would make some sense. I have him projected to be very popular, and I run a model with certain implied ownerships where, based on the value and the Vegas totals and all that good stuff, what the ownership should be on a player, and it was like 90% on Dylan Brooks. So again, it's tough to ignore him at the price and at the usage and what he can do and all that stuff. But if you were looking to build sheerly based on leverage and being different, fading Dillon Brooks for some of these, I guess, overpriced Memphis guys could make some sense. Like if you think about it, nobody's really going to play Desmond Bane the same way that they're going to play Dillon Brooks. But Desmond Bane's also been playing really solid minutes, and he's also had a decent usage rate, not quite to the level that Brooks has had. But I mean, I'm not saying that this is what I'm recommending. I'm saying if you're looking to be contrarian, these are things that you could do. So I definitely prefer Brooks. He's number 1 in the player rater on DraftKings, number 3 on FanDuel. I think he's a very, very good play. So, I mean, I'm going to try to be over the field. I think I'm only doing one lineup on FanDuel tonight, and he's probably going to be, and he's in there right now. So tough to ignore him. But if you were looking to be a little bit different, there are other plays on this Memphis team alone that you can use. I still think Jaren Jackson is the best play on FanDuel. He's 6,200. FanDuel's just falling asleep at the wheel on this guy. His price has fallen now in, I believe, either 2 or 3 straight slates, despite having pretty good games. So yeah, I mean, his price keeps falling, and 6,200 is really cheap for a guy who can be a very, very good permanent producer. He's up over 1.2 fantasy point per minute when when I just saw your message when John Morant's off the court. So I really like Jaren Jackson tonight, especially on FanDuel. He's probably going to be the guy that I come really close to just locking in on FanDuel. I know he's super volatile as well. So again, same kind of line of thought there with Brooks. Like, okay, if you wanted to bank on Jaren Jackson getting into foul trouble, you can do things with that in terms of looking to make certain fades or pivots. But me personally, he's a guy that I'm just going to play on FanDuel. And on DraftKings, that's kind of how I feel about Brooks as well. So, however, kind of pivoting to some other guys on this team, I think you can basically make a case for any Memphis player not named like Killian Tilly or something like that. Like if Kyle Anderson's out, you can make a case for John Conchar on DraftKings, in my opinion. Saw 22 minutes a couple games ago with Kyle Anderson out. I love D'Anthony Melton tonight. I think he should be way higher as well in terms of ownership over on DraftKings, 4,600. I have him well over that 5x value threshold, so he's someone I like a lot as well. He'll probably be my favorite lowish own. I don't think he'll be contrarian by any means, but I think he'll be probably half the ownership of Dillon Brooks, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I like it. And I like all these Memphis guys as well. I think mixing it up in multiple lineups, or if you're single entry GPP and you want to get off some of that Dillon Brooks ownership, I'm right there with you. I think it's interesting. Like, I'm really nervous. Like, obviously Triple J projects as a really good play today on this short slate, and the upside is certainly there. I think 40 plus DraftKings points in 3 of his last 5. But man, this matchup, like with a Lakers team where they just have multiple guys that just want to put their heads down and get into the paint and attack the rim, like it feels like the perfect spot for Jaron Jackson Jr. to actually foul out. He continuously gets 5 fouls in plenty of these games, but I don't know, man. I'm just nervous. Maybe I just don't have the stones to go in heavy on Triple J tonight. And he's got the 9 ranking because I can't ignore the upside and just the median projection in general. But guys, making me nervous about those fouls. And I think and this holds true for the entirety of a short slate. If you want to build to a narrative, like you think one of these games blows out, I'm totally fine with that. Like if you think the Lakers somehow just boat race the Grizzlies off the court tonight, then you maybe want to have your last guy in be Xavier Tillman or a John Conchar or something like that. Santi Aldama, right? If this game gets out of hand in the first 3 quarters and you get 16, 18 minutes out of any of those guys, like as a last man in, like again, that's personal preference on how you think this short slate is going to go, because to take down one of these huge GPPs with tens of thousands of entries in them, you're probably going to have to get a little bit different. So not advocating for all that stuff in one lineup, just saying that's part of the process for tournament players, especially on a slate like this. Anything else from this game? Are we ready to get to the night? Well, I say nightcap. I think it tips off at 8:30 Eastern, early into the slate tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one guy that I kind of dismissed was Killian Tilly, but he did play 19 minutes last game. California said that he was the first guy off the bench. I don't know if he meant last game, but he wasn't the first guy off the bench last game, but he did get significant time off the bench. And it kind of deferred he got minutes over guys like Tillman and Aldama, who I don't have him projected for right now. I have Aldama for about 15, Tillman for 16, and Tilly for 10. So I guess things could switch around. And if, both Tillman and Aldama get 9 or 10 minutes again, that could be really good for Tilly. Obviously things change a ton if Kyle Anderson is rolled in, which I haven't projected out right now. But that's just one thing that I wanted to know before we moved on.
Yeah, Tilly, the fifth guy off the bench in that last game, but did appear in the regular rotation in the second half as well. So, again, like Coach Jenkins out there in Memphis has always been somebody that runs like frustratingly deep lineups, or rotations, I should say, night to night. And even with John Morant out, Kyle Anderson out, Brandon Clark out, Zaire Williams, he just continues to dig into that bench. So all those guys, that they don't stand out as the smash them in value plays, but all of them going to get out there and play, probably double-digit minutes. So let's go to this last game. The Denver Nuggets visiting my lowly San Antonio Spurs, now tied in wins with both the Thunder and the Rockets. So Cody and all my other Houston fans out there, Cam, etc., keep on winning. We appreciate it. I don't think we're going to catch your Pistons, Kyle. I think only 4 or 5 wins, but we'll take the wins where we can get them. And by wins, I mean losses. A Steelers win tonight and a Spurs loss would be a perfect Thursday night for your boy. Enough of that. Talking Denver here, Nikola Jokic, my favorite spend up on this slate, if you can get to him on the salary sites, right? Like 11-8 on DraftKings is no joke, especially on this short slate. And over there on FanDuel, 11-1, kind of the same story. Are you with me? Like, get as much Jokic as you can. Like, he's not somebody I don't think I can lock tonight because of just not a lot of value that I'm in love with.
Yeah, that's the value part is fair, but yeah, it's as much as you possibly can for me. Mm-hmm. Just for example, like on FanDuel, just when I'm sorting by projected point per dollar, he's 4th. And that's partially because there's not a lot of great value on the slate, but partially because he's projecting for almost 60 FanDuel points. And on DraftKings, he is projecting for 60 DraftKings points. And on that site, he's like an 8th in terms of value on the board for me. So definitely a priority for me. And the interesting part is if he was like a point guard or something, he's probably projecting for like 50 or 60% ownership. But since he's a center and there's a few other centers in the slate that people like, he's not getting as much of an ownership run. So I still think he's going to be very popular. He should be the most popular stud on the slate. But if he were a guard or a forward, or he had, I don't know, point guard eligibility, or obviously he doesn't. But if he was a point guard, I think he would be much more popular over there. So again, I think in terms of ownership, I really want to get as much as I can.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And, I know better than probably anybody in the chat what this man does to the San Antonio Spurs last 4 times out in terms of DraftKings points: 70, 68, 52, 61. So, yeah, get some Nikola Jokic, not knocking Jakob Poeltl, an above average defender, but nobody can stop the reigning MVP from doing what he wants to, especially with all the, high usage guys out for this team. And with the remaining Nuggets, not a ton that I love here, Kyle. Will Barton, Aaron Gordon, just very much secondary plays for me. I'd rather get to any of those Memphis guys in the 6 to 7K range. Monte Morris stands out a bit more to me just for the savings than those two. And then looking down into the value range, I think Bones Highland by far my favorite value, sub 5K for the Nuggets.
Yep, I agree with you. On DraftKings, Bones is definitely very interesting. I have him for just under that 5x threshold in terms of value on a point per dollar perspective there. So I like him a lot. And he's going to be, pretty low owned. I have him at about sub 10% right now in DraftKings. So I think that's pretty appealing. What are your thoughts on, Jokic and Bones in the same lineup? I know it's a 3-game slate, so it's hard to be super picky. But, in games where this game blows out, based on the Vegas spread, not something that you're really expecting. Dylan Brooks placed in health and safety protocols.
Holy fuck, mate. God damn it. Are you serious?
So that
well,
I just slid that one in pretty smoothly. I don't know. That transition.
Oh my. Okay. Shit, man. Let's finish this game up and then we'll spend the last 15 minutes or so on the Grizzlies, good Lord, man. Like both NFL and NBA right now really struggling to keep guys out of players and coaches. Rick Carlisle also in the protocols for the Pacers. So but we'll get back to that. Let's finish this game up here. I don't think there's a ton else to talk about Denver just to finish it up. I do think you can play Bones and Jokic in the same lineup. And I would not be surprised to see Bones kind of flip with Facu Campazzo in terms of their minutes load tonight, 22-16 last night in favor of Campazzo. And on the back-to-back here tonight, I also think Bones is just a better matchup against this Spurs front court. You know, the likes of DeJounte Murray, Derrick White. It's, you know, I love Facu, but Bones Highland to me is just the better play, and you're saving a couple $100 over there on DK. But flipping to the San Antonio side, what'd you call him earlier? Like a Westbrook light? I would say Westbrook 2.0 at this point because
I called him the better version of Westbrook.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so yeah, Westbrook 2.0 at 9.7. DeJounte Murray. Rare at least for the recent past letdown game on Tuesday for him, 15-7-7 with a steal against the Knicks. But you know, prior to that, he had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row without dropping below 47.5 DK points, and 5 of those games he exceeded 50. And we've seen this season that his ceiling is even higher than that. So sub 10K here, cheaper than all 3 of those Lakers studs. I love getting to DeJounte Murray, and I think the field does as well. How are you treating the Spurs point guard?
I think the field does, but not enough, in my opinion. 25% or 26% on DraftKings, 34% on FanDuel, which are big numbers. I'm not saying he's going to be contrarian or anything, or nobody's going to play him, but on a 3-game slate, I think people are deferring to more, you know, other options, maybe a little bit more expensive, maybe some of the Lakers guys. So I think he should be more popular. I like him a lot. His top 4 on the player rater on both sites, 2 on DraftKings, 4th on FanDuel. So yeah, I mean, he's been arguably the most impressive player in the NBA this season based on, you know, certain, I guess, the normal expectations of a player, right? He's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure you've been thrilled with it. So he's someone I like a lot. Derrick White's price on FanDuel is $7,900 now.
Oh my God, I did not see that.
Yeah, he's had a couple of pretty big games here in the last week or so. So the price shot up. Tough to play him at that price. He's going to have no ownership over there, but I don't think I can get to it. Pirtle is interesting because on FanDuel, he's going to have no ownership. And on DraftKings, you probably won't have a ton of ownership either because everyone's playing Jokic or Embiid. Again, I would much rather get to Jokic. I have Jokic projecting as a better point per dollar play than Pirtle, which is crazy because Jokic is almost double the price. Yeah. But that's just how much I like Jokic tonight. But if you were doing one of your, I don't know, one of 10 or 20 lineups without Jokic, going to Pirtle makes some sense there, in my opinion. Lonnie Walker is one of my favorite value plays of the slate, 3,700 on DraftKings, 41 on FanDuel. I think he's really interesting on FanDuel because I don't think he gets a lot of ownership here. 4,100, like I mentioned, prices up a little bit. So, yeah, I like him a pretty good amount.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on most all of that. Jakob Poeltl, I think, is a strong play still on DK, but I just prefer so much to get up to Jokic in that game and just positionally. Certainly on Super Draft, I already made the case that I would probably lock in Jokic at the center spot there, even at the floor 1x multiplier. But it's 6'4" on DK. I think he's just fine. I'm not sure it would be a double center night for me. And I certainly don't, I really don't think I'm going to pair Poeltl and Jokic in the same lineup. But with, who is it? Keldon. Big body out for the Spurs. We're going to get some lineup news at some point here for San Antonio. I expect it to be Keita Bates-Diop that slides into the starting lineup, but I would not be surprised to see Lonnie Walker or Devin Vassell get the nod here. I actually think Devin Vassell, Lonnie Walker is the strongest play from a projection standpoint at his 3.7. But now that Devin Vassell's down to 4.1, I know he's been injured lately, so there is some trepidation in terms of his minutes load. If he wasn't injured, I would expect maybe Vassell would exceed 30 minutes. It's tough to say that with confidence with him struggling with the quad injury. I believe he was doubtful to start the day and now is in. So I like him a lot in tournaments, Vassell that is, because I think the possibility that he gets that upper 20s, low 30s in minutes, that possibility is certainly there. We've seen crazier things happen, of course, on a Popovich coach team. And at 4-1, even if he's only going to get 23 or 24 minutes, he's been a pretty good fantasy producer this year. So I also have a good amount of love for Devin Vassell. And Doug McDermott also solid, with Keldon out. It's at 4.2 price tag. The guy just needs to hit his shots, and he's going to produce enough to not kill you at that price. But Lonnie and Devin Vassell, my two favorite values from the Spurs team. Not crazy to play a Keita Bates-Diop if he's going to get into the mid-20s in minutes. Obviously not a great fantasy producer, but on this slate, somebody who's 3-3 and could start for one of the 6 teams on the slate, certainly cannot X him out of an MME pool. And then I'm just going to mention President Primo, the rookie, Josh Primo, in this rotation now. And with Keldon going out, it doesn't directly benefit him, but I do think he's going to stay in the mid-teens in minutes. I would not be playing him, but I just wanted to mention because Spurs. All right, let's talk Memphis. And I know you're probably updating projections over there, so I'll give my takes here before we throw it to you, Kyle. I think this is going to help guys like kind of at the bottom that we talked about, John Conchar. It also makes the blowout more likely. So I think you're maybe going to I don't think you bump these guys up in projections, but from a game theory standpoint, now guys like Xavier Tillman, Santi Aldama, and the Killian Tilly piece that we talked a little bit about, those guys become more interesting values to me if you build for the Lakers to blow Memphis out here. But I think John Conchar is far and away my biggest beneficiary because of his price and all the studs on this slate that we want to get in. I'd imagine you're also going to get, cookies for Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, and Triple J. But again, I think it comes down to personal preference. How do you think this game plays out as a DFS manager? So how are the numbers shaking things out for Memphis now with Dylan Brooks sidelined?
Yeah, I mean, doing the minutes and stuff, I kind of feel as if the Kyle Anderson news is really important now. At first, if he was in, it would just take away minutes from the secondary guys that didn't really matter. But now I think it's really big to figure out if he's going to play or not. Because if he's out, then this is turning into a summer league or a preseason type deal where they have to play all these guys a pretty good amount of minutes, right? Especially some guys who've been decent permanent producers like Conchar. But first instinct is that guys like Desmond Bane, D'Anthony Melton, already pretty good permanent producers, are going to get locked into more minutes. I mean, Melton was already one of my favorite plays from this team, as is. And so now I like him even more. He's probably going to be my favorite now outside of Jaron Jackson Jr. Jackson Jr. is probably going to take on more offensive production there, so I like him a pretty good amount. Tyus Jones is probably going to be asked for a ton of minutes. Someone just asked for a projections update. I just updated, so those should be good now. But Jones, I think, is going to play as many minutes as possible. Well, I shouldn't say as many. I don't think he's going to play 42, but I think 36 is a really good potential spot for Jones. Same for Bane. And Melton, I think, could potentially touch 30 now. Conchar is probably going to be in the mid-20s, who I like. But if Kyle Anderson's out, Conchar has a real good shot at being mid to upper 20s, I think. Melton would almost be – it'd be tough for Melton to not get 30 minutes, which makes him a very, very good play. So this Kyle Anderson news now is huge, but pretty much all these guys that we talked about get really significant bumps.
Yeah, I completely agree. And John Conchar with these guys off the court, these guys being Brandon Clark, Dylan Brooks, John Morant, and Zaire Williams, John Conchar leading the team in minutes. Obviously, some of those main rotation guys not playing a ton of minutes with those other guys off the court in this young season. So take that with a grain of salt. But
sorry,
go ahead.
Not to cut you off, but if Kyle Anderson does play, he's a great play as well, because he's probably going to be. I had him projected out, but now with this news, I wouldn't be surprised. Hey, if you're good to go, get on in there. So if that's going to be the case, then I'm actually going to project him in now. I guess I probably don't anticipate they roll him out there for max minutes there, but if he's going to play mid-20s, again, another pretty good permanent producer, he's in play.
Yeah, I think if he's in, again, I don't think a ton of people will get there. I do have concerns because it's his back that's been bothering him,
Yeah.
right? So you don't want to come back with the injured back. I didn't mean to do that, but you don't want to just go ahead and load him up with 30 plus minutes. But you don't, at that price, you don't need 30 plus minutes.
Right.
Didn't crack 20 in any of his last 3 games. Some of that, I think, due to blowout. Beat the crap out of the Kings on the 28th. Lost by 32 to the Hawks on the 26th, also illustrating how long Kyle Anderson has been out. Another piece that EZB points out about John Contra on DraftKings is he is guard forward eligible, giving you some extra versatility when building lineups on DK. Devin Vassell confirmed in. Rajon Rondo, non-COVID illness, ruled out for the Lakers. I think LeBron ruled Rajon Rondo out a few weeks ago. Let's see, Dylan Brooks. Sixers will, no surprises, Maxi, Curry, Green, Harris, Embiid, and Kyle Anderson still remains a game time decision. Under 7 minutes here until lock, so we'll open it up to the Discord for all these questions. I know a couple have built up. JJ Frick chiming in here, Kyle. Would you rather play Rudy Gay or Lonnie Walker tonight?
Probably Rudy Gay.
Okay. Lunch bet? Give me Lonnie Walker.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
You got to get back to 500 here.
Yeah, that's true. I don't feel like super confident about it, but the projection's like Gay like by 1 point. So I'll do lunch bet, sure.
Okay, there we go. Let's see. Javi's chiming in. He's on a call, so he can't listen to the show, but wants to know if we can rank our Grizzlies. Javi, I know since he's not listening, I'll go ahead and put him on blast. I would check the projections and the rankings that both of us do, but I'll go ahead and type the rankings in for him here in a minute. Now with the and I think the answer here is going to be we need Kyle Anderson news, but Steelers fan chiming in, Killian Tilly or Keita Bates Diop?
If Anderson plays and Bates Diop starts, I guess I would prefer Bates Diop. But I just don't really – I think you can do better.
Yeah, I also agree on both counts. I think it's kind of wait and see on news for Slow-Mo and the Spurs starting lineup. And even then, I think if Slow-Mo's out, I'm going Conchar over both of those guys. Charge Up asking what's the read on Slow-Mo playing. Dude, I think they set him. Like, what they were already home dogs to the Lakers, right? Let me make sure I'm not getting that wrong. 3 points, right? 4. I don't see if that's grown. I don't see any movement, but 4-point home dogs. You just lost the guy was probably going to be your leading scorer tonight. Do you really force Kyle Anderson back if his back's not 100%? I wouldn't. I'm going to say that he ends up sitting. Let's see, a 2v2 here from Charge Up. Clarkson and Slow-Mo, or obviously assuming he's in, or Monty and Conchar. I would Monte Morris and John Conchar. I think, honestly, Kyle, either way. Because I like Monte Morris fine for his low 5K price tag on DK. And I think John Conchar is going to get elevated minutes regardless of Kyle Anderson coming back or not. So I would side with the second one.
Yeah, I agree.
2v2 from our guy Easy B, Danny Green and Royce O'Neal or Lonnie Walker, Rudy Gay?
Second one. I think there's more upside with the second one.
I also lean slightly to the second one, but I don't hate either of them. All 4 of those guys, I think some of our favorite sub 4.5K values on DraftKings. Benton Gregory chiming in. I think Benton's new to the chat over the last week or so. So welcome again, Brenton. Sorry, I got that wrong, buddy.
Sports, so
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see Brenton in these NBA streets. He's asking us Mike Conley or Seth Curry. It's Mike Conley for me. It's not super close for me on this slate.
Yeah, I prefer Conley as well.
Conrad Joseph Metz chiming in. Royce or Bojan in a lineup with Donovan Mitchell on FanDuel. There's a $300 difference there. He assumes Royce. I kind of want Bojan there.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think Bojan could outscore him just with real points. Could top Royce's fantasy points on the right night if that shot is falling. Let's see, Brock chiming in here, Melton or THT. It's Melton for me now, and not super close.
Yep, same.
G Coop chiming in, who is, I'm sure, thankful that he doesn't have to deal with Dylan Brooks tonight, asking, is Jared Culver with the team? My answer is, I believe he is. And even if he is, I don't think I don't think he becomes one of those guys that gets double-digit minutes. If Culver's going to play any time tonight, I think it's probably 6 to 8 minutes. They really don't want to play Jared Culver. Carmelo or Royce O'Neal for you?
Carmelo, I guess. I mean, so I think Carmelo, just because I think you want to wait, you want to defer some of this news. Like I had Royce O'Neal in my lineup, but I'm trying to push back as much as I can so I can wait on this Kyle Anderson news, which sounds ridiculous that we're waiting for Kyle Anderson news like that.
Yeah.
But it really does impact a lot.
Yeah. I mean, Royce, to Cody's point, Royce O'Neal has been fantastic lately, from both a real basketball and a fantasy standpoint. But I feel like, as somebody who, I'd like to dabble in the Royce O'Neal from time to time, I feel like every time he builds us up like this, he lets us down. And it's gonna hurt even more on a 3-game slate if that happens. But like the 4-3 price tag on DraftKings, if we're talking DK, I think he's absolutely fine to roll out there. He's very strong at 4.3K. Should play 30+ minutes as long as that game doesn't get out of hand. Easy B coming in again, Tyus or Derrick White? That's closer for me.
Tyus for me.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to lean Tyus just with the extra usage to go around. And I'm not so much a believer in Derrick White. Like, I don't think Derrick White, the truth is somewhere in the middle from the first 3 weeks of the season to the last 3 that we've experienced with Derrick White, where he was absolute crap, got down to the mid 4Ks, I believe, at one point on DraftKings. And with his recent production, back up to that low 6K range. I'll also lean Tyus Jones there. Josh saying happy he doesn't have to play Brooks tonight. Yeah, you and G Coop. Let's see. I'm 30 seconds out. Sorry, Javi. I know he's not listening. Didn't get a chance to type in my ranks, but Javi, a brilliant dude, I'm sure can find his way to the projections and the ranks. Not seeing anything else pop up here with 15 seconds to go. So we will obviously be around in Discord, waiting on this Kyle Anderson news, waiting on the Spurs starting 5. But as we do that, everybody, if you're an NFL subscriber here at FTN Daily, there's a big Thursday night game tonight, Kyle. The Steelers traveling to Minnesota to take on the Minnesota Vikings. Both teams, the only teams in the NFL who can't manage to defeat the Detroit Lions. But only one of those 2 teams actually caught an L. So if you are an NFL subscriber, 14 minutes from now, that NFL stream will be starting up. And some of the best showdown minds in the industry, Derek Brown, Tenacious D Jones. I think producer Thomas may be going to hop on and do his thing. So that's always fun. But, if you're not an NFL subscriber or a subscriber at all here at FTN Daily and you're catching this show for free, I'd invite you to come check us out. The NBA package here, specifically, we include the state-of-the-art optimizer from this guy right here. Kyle Murray includes every slate every day, his proprietary player and ownership projections. Alex Blickel helps him out a little bit as well. We've got all kinds of tools, the NBA on-off splits, the advanced DVP tools. Everybody here knows that's one of my favorites. The infamous FTN Daily NBA Premium Discord channel, where we answer all these questions up through lock and through the last lock of the night. Rankings every single day from Fast Eddie Fear and myself, and all that starts at $49.99 per month. But you can use the code FTNTV, and that'll get you 15% off every month of your subscription. Not just this month, every month for the rest of the NBA season. So to repeat, that code is FTNTV, and it equals 15% off every month of your subscription. Well, Kyle, no news coming in here. I see people, I guess maybe the DK main did not fill. So rake free there on DraftKings, which is nice. See T Panthers chiming in here. Your Steelers might get Mike Zimmer fired. Kyle, I think that Mike Zimmer didn't get fired because there is a game on Thursday. And I agree with T-Panthers. I think it's bad news for him if he loses this one as well. And I didn't even read the second sentence. I said he would have been fired Monday if they weren't on this Thursday game. So me stealing T-Panthers thunder there, I will give him credit for that take. Jay Craig asking, when will we get an update? I'm not sure what update you're talking about, but we will get an update on Kyle Anderson news. We will get an update on the Spurs starting lineup, and then there will be updates to come for the projections, for the ranks with that news. Conrad the sixth. Conrad Joseph Metz the sixth.
This
it's
sounds
fantastic.
like a politician.
It's a great lineage there up in Wisconsin. Dello popping up. Good to see Dello. All right, guys, that'll do it for us. We'll jump into the chat, make way for the Mario Kart stream, aka the NFL Showdown stream, coming up in about 10 minutes. We appreciate all of you joining us on this Thursday. I'm off tomorrow. Kyle, I'm not sure if you're going to be back, but there will be a show tomorrow to cover the 9-game Friday slate. We'll see all you guys in the Discord later on tonight. For Kyle, I'm Zach. Shout out Thomas, our producer extraordinaire. And as always,
let's get these beans.